He's back. No box, no kick, no fight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be up late with Sion Marshall? It's up late with Sion Marshall.
Oh. Thank you very much, and good night. That wasn't bad, Vince. That was actually quite cool. You know, I could, yeah. All right. Good evening, good night, and good morning or good midday wherever you are, and welcome to this, the 8th episode of Up Late with Sion Marshall. I'm your host, Sion Marshall. Let me thank you so much for supporting the show. Those of you who are on Facebook, you've logged on already, you've been there for the last half hour, waiting for the show to start. Thank you so much for sticking around. And as you heard from the applause, we have a nice, robust little audience here. The operative word being little. But I'm happy so much, really happy that you've joined us. We have an excellent show for you tonight. One that, when you tuned in, I believe would keep you riveted and would hopefully start a discussion on a very, very important, very sensitive, very serious issue. But we'll get into that a little bit. As usual, I'm going to have to try and share this, and I'm always clumsy. So let me do this. Yeah, hold on. Share now. Right. I think I've just shared it. Okay. We are coming live, as the announcer said, from the Harvest Bible Chapel in Annesville, St. Vincent. Let me thank host Pastor Al Blake, for graciously allowing us to use his facility. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, makes me want to worship, right, Vince? And later on, Pastor Al would be on, and he can give you specifics about worship times here at the chapel. But I worshipped here once, and it's a fantastic place. The atmosphere is wonderful, so I can encourage people in the surroundings and wherever you are to drop by on a Sunday or whatever days they are open for fellowship and worship with them. And trust me, Pastor Al didn't pay me to say that. That was just from the heart. So tonight, as I said earlier, we are going to be dealing with the issue of depression. About 2 issues ago, the Searchlight newspaper did an article, a full story on me regarding this show, Up Late with Sion Marshall. And something came out in that show where I offered or admitted that when I just came home from New York, from the United States, under a cloud of controversy, there was a very low period in my life where I felt extremely depressed, very sad, didn't want to leave home. And it wasn't until I started working on this show that I started feeling purpose. I started beginning to feel alive again. And that, as it were, helped me out of the situation I was in. To be honest, though, there were other factors. I had some really, really great friends who were there. My family was exceptional. They were there for me, and they supported me 100%. But I had really good friends like Terrence Edwards, who called me every day, Richard Byron Cox, Ray Carr, Vestrisha, people who were there for me and always checked in on me, reaffirmed their belief, their support, belief in me and support for me, and also just general encouragement. And there were friends there who never judged or pointed fingers towards me. And I think all of those things helped me along significantly to the point where I was able to get beyond what I was feeling. Tonight, you would hear the story of, not just my story as I expand on it, but also the story of another individual who has been battling the issue of depression over a period of time. And she would tell you more about her story and how she's dealing with it. You would also hear the professional perspective of clinical psychologist, clinical and school psychologist Alisa Alvis, as well as the perspective of host pastor Al Blake. Stay tuned tonight, and I believe that when this show is finished, we wouldn't have diagnosed anyone, nor would we have prescribed any type of treatment for anybody. But I believe we would have started a discussion that we need to start, because over the last couple of weeks, a number of things have been happening in our society, and I am in no way suggesting that they're directly linked. They may or may not be. However, I believe that this discussion needs to start, and Upplate is starting it tonight. When we come back, we chat with Amanda Vanloo Blucher. You know her as Vincy K Girl. We'll be right back.
It's the Friends of Sign Hill 5th Annual Fundraising Barbecue, Saturday, July 14th from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Friends of Crown Heights, 1435 Prospect Place, between Utica and Rochester Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. On the menu, chicken, fish, and pork. Music by DI Entertainment. Donation $20. For more information, call 917-560-0432, 347-262-8014, or 646-248-3995.
Every day in your community, a child goes to school without breakfast. They're smart and they try hard, but it's not easy for them to learn when they're hungry. Right now, these children need help. You can help. Through the Start Bright Breakfast Initiative, you can help to brighten a child's future. 1. Recycle empty plastic beverage bottles by giving them to participating schools. 2. Drink Tusty water. Proceeds from every bottle purchased are used to sustain the school breakfast. And 3. Contribute $1 by texting 123 to 5446 from your digital phone. All supporters are eligible for ongoing prizes. No matter how you participate, you will help to brighten a child's future. Don't let our boys and girls start their school days on empty stomachs. Get involved today. Thanks for supporting Start Bright, a Tusty Water Breakfast Initiative. To support specific schools, visit tusty.com for more info.
He's back. No box, no kick, no fight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be at late with Sion Marshall? It's at late with Sion Marshall.
Make sure my mic is on. It's on. All right, great. All right, welcome back to this Upplate with Sion Marshall. I'm just going spaced out right now. As mentioned before, we have with us in studio Mrs. Amanda Vanloo Blucher. Amanda, good evening.
Good evening, Sion. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
No, thank you for coming. And we had discussions before,
Yes.
Leading up to this tonight's show. And I did mention to you that what drove me to do tonight's show is the fact that people reached out to me after that article in the Searchlight. People started reaching out to me for whatever reason. Maybe because they thought here was someone who knew what I was going through, or maybe I could empathize with them and so forth. But tell us a little bit about Amanda outside of the posts that you've been doing on Facebook. Tell us about Amanda, the individual. Where is Amanda from? Where did Amanda go to school? Those kind of things.
Okay, so I had a very humble upbringing. I am Amanda Vanloo Blucher, as that has been established. I attended the Petersville Primary School, and then I further went on to St. Vincent Girls High School. I spent some time in Barbados, and then I came back and went to the St. Vincent Community College as well. Basically studying business, etc., etc.
Okay. And you're a bit of an entrepreneur now.
I am. I've developed into an entrepreneur over the past 10 years. So I'm self-employed and a mom of one so far. Yes.
Okay. You have a very unique skill. For anybody who is unaware so far, Amanda goes under the Facebook name and I think it's a business name as well.
Business name.
Vincy Cake Girl.
Definitely.
Tell us about Vincy Cake Girl.
Okay, Vincy Cake Girl. She was discovered when I was about 19 years old. Mind you, I have been baking previously from since I know myself. 9 years old, getting up at 3 in the morning, helping my mom in the kitchen. It has been my entire life, baking. And in a weird way, Vincy Cake Girl was developed in the midst of one of my most depressive situations. And I gravitated to creating cakes, and it just kept me going. So I kept creating cakes, and I started looking into ways to making it better. I didn't know people was decorating cakes like the way I started, and I used YouTube as my medium to establish myself as a young person. And even up to this day, I still do a lot of research, and I try to expand my craft and develop every time. So if you had something from me 3 years ago, what I have now is completely different than then.
So you can follow her on Facebook. She's also on Instagram. And apart from following her, order her stuff. Because when you see what she does, it's mad creative. Trust me about it. You developed Vincy Cake Girl in one of your most depressing spells.
Yes.
How long have you been struggling with the issue of depression?
It's very hard to trace back. But I grew up in a very abusive environment, so I believe that most of it would have streamed from then. Me being aware of my depression and what it was, because at the time in my teen years, I wasn't too sure what it was because it's not a topic that's ever really discussed. So I understood it during my pregnancy with Ocean, when I had, well, you would say like basically a breakdown after his dad and I broke up. So I would say that I've been probably struggling with it ever since, but the awareness of it would have been when I was 21. So ever since I've been aware of it, it's like learning how to cope, learning I was offered to go on medications at one time because I did psychotherapy and I did have a diagnosis as well. And it was... It's a mouthful. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's a mouthful.
What are some of the things that you experience or you go through when you're having these spells?
Okay, so I think over the years my depression have changed, where I would be depressed about things at times. You know, everyone, I think, at some point in their time is established that we experience some form of depression. But instead of being depressed about a situation or what I'm going through, because I've matured as an adult, I think that I handle situations pretty well. But then what I'm dealing with now is that there are moments when I just don't understand why I feel this way. I would wake up in the morning and I hope that this morning I could go into my kitchen and work productively and not want to just lie in my bed all day. So I have a lot of spells like that. I have a lot of days where I have maybe 1 or 2 setbacks because I just don't understand the feeling that I have. It's just it's a suppressing feeling. You don't want to do anything. And it's not like there's something happening in my life. Like I've had instances where my husband and I would be out and we're having a great time and I just turn to him and I'm like, I'm sad. So I battle with that, and this is the part where I was fighting like with myself a lot and denying the fact, because being a Christian, it's really hard to admit and say, well, you know, I feel this way sometimes, or even at church sometimes I get really down, and you know, it's a struggle and not something that people want to admit. It's more so seen as a spiritual issue at church. So But for me, I know what I'm dealing with, and it is a situation that I have prayed about. And even through my video, I have, like you, I've had a lot of persons reach out to me, a lot of young women especially, and young men who have messaged me. The first time, I never expected my video to go so far. It was for me, because at the beginning of this year, I decided that I was going to find myself, find something to gravitate and build myself around whatever I'm experiencing right now. So on my journey, it was really hard to start. People only saw the video, but leading up to the video, it was just 3 months of me trying to pull myself to actually do things and collect myself. A part of my journey was starting to working out, gravitating towards being productive, like actually setting goals and meeting them, which is really hard to do when you're depressed. But one thing I have learned is that even if I didn't get to do it this week, I'll at least get it done this week, next week.
And I can relate to what you're talking about, because as I said, when I came home, I remember there was this controversy, and I had to literally shut myself off from the media.
Yeah.
Literally, I didn't listen to the radio, I didn't read newspapers, and I came home. I had no job, I had no family, and I was having difficulty. So all of that really had me in a situation where, on most days, I just didn't want to get out of bed, and I would just be in bed all day. I wouldn't eat,
even if you tried to get up, it's a struggle.
And you talked about being out with your husband. I would be in town. I'd go to hang at a particular place where I hang and so forth. I'd meet Vince and other guys there and so forth. But in the midst of it, I would just want to leave. Yeah. There's nothing fulfilling, rewarding, or I just do not want to be there anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I could so relate to that aspect. And like you said, I think for me, I have been busy, productive for most of my life. I left school at 17 years old.
Wow.
I started teaching then. You know what I mean? So I've been working since I'm 17 years old, and for the first time, I don't have something productive to do, not because I'm on vacation, but because I don't have something to do, and I have no family around me. So I understand that. Now you mentioned, and later on we're going to have Pastor Al address that issue, where sometimes the seriousness of depression and other forms of mental illness, but we're speaking specifically of depression today, is dismissed as being demonic. Just simply straightforward. It's the spirit of depression, and I'm not knocking anybody if they want to address it that way, but sometimes I think that beyond breaking the curse of depression, that there would need to be actual things, call it therapy, that must be done, that must be implemented to help you along that journey.
I agree.
And as I said, I'm grateful I had up late to work on, and you had your avenue, your cakes to work on. But you said you were prescribed medication at one time.
Yes, I was.
Why didn't you follow through on that?
Because from my prescription, the diagnosis would have been bipolarity, and which is very heavy. It's a very heavy personality to take on, and I was prescribed lithium and Seroquel at the time, and that was right after I had Ocean. I didn't think that it was the right treatment for me. I did a lot of research, because before I put anything to my mouth, I look it up. And I just felt like there were certain things that, turned me off about it, because I never know which side effect I would have had from the medication. I have also spoken to, I created a small WhatsApp group, because after a lot of persons started reaching out to me on the video, about 48 persons did.
Wow.
Yes, I don't remember how much persons are in the WhatsApp group, but there are a few of them that joined the WhatsApp group, and we speak, and some persons are on medication, some persons were on medication, and those who were on medication decided to come off because of the side effects you were having. So I was afraid to have that side effects, and one of the side effects would have been me losing my ability, my like artistic ability, which always kept me home, and I was afraid that I would lose that. That would have been my only reason for not taking the medication.
Okay.
And it was not easy. It is not easy not being on medication. I'm not sure what it would be like being on medication, but I wouldn't encourage anyone that is on, like in my group, anyone that is on medication to discontinue because I'm not on it.
Right.
You know, because a lot of persons look up to me for speaking out, but I did this for myself.
Right.
I didn't, you know. So for me,
which is important though, because you're not a professional. You're going through something and you found a way to cope with it.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that you're able to diagnose and tell somebody stop taking the medication.
Exactly.
I was supposed to be having another guest tonight as well, and she messaged me earlier today and explained to me that a side effect of the medication she's taken is she has an allergic reaction to it, and it breaks out on her skin.
Okay.
And so she's having that today. It's just itching all over and breaking out. So she's not here tonight. So clearly, there are some side effects to some people.
Some persons.
Based on the medication that they take. That, of course, this is not a professional diagnosis. I'm not telling you anything about your thing. If you're taking medication and you're having a reaction, see a doctor. Don't say on Marshall on a plate said, you know, okay? Please. All right. Finally, Amanda, you talked about coping mechanisms, and you talk about using your cakes.
Yes.
What else do you do outside of running in the kitchen and baking a batch of cakes, which I'm sure Asha loves when he wishes he could be depressed all the time because he gets cakes all the time. But outside of that, what are some of the other things that you do to try and cope with your periods?
I would say definitely before cakes, Ocean is my center. You know, I have one or two persons who have never had children that suffer from depression, that are afraid to have kids because they're like, oh, I don't know if I'll be a good mom or whatever, but I'm a great mom. And Ocean is is my coping mechanism. Like, sometimes I'm really down, and I think that I don't like him to see me down. So when he comes into my room, I'm like, hey, buddy, what's up? You know, so he changes my mood. Other than that, as I said earlier this year, because last year was very rough for me, the beginning of this year was even rough, but I made a mental note that I would have started at some time, even if it wasn't January 1st, to just start making goals. And it's not easy to do. One of my things that I noted was making me depressed. I started putting on a lot of weight. So, and a lot of few persons I've spoken to aren't comfortable with their exterior and their personality, how they look. So I decided to work on me, and I started a journey for myself. So I have a pretty busy schedule every day. And what I started doing is taking a gap, at least half hour to 45 minutes every day, where I just spend that time with myself, whether it be 50 minutes of praying, half an hour of working out, just something surrounding Amanda, and cutting off every negative energy that's around me. And then I just deal with the rest of the day.
That's important.
Yeah, it's not easy to start.
The negative energy versus the positive energy.
Yes.
And when we come back, we're going to for a break just now. When we come back, we would invite Ms. Alvis, clinical psychologist, here to chat with us. But before we do the break, I can't tell you how valuable having positive energy was around me. Having people who reaffirmed their respect, their support, their belief in me. You know, yes, Sion, you may have made an error, but you know, don't stay down, get up. I believe that you can get up, and so forth. And so it was not about me feeling like Hulk and drawing all of the energy from within.
Yeah.
But it was also because of a lot of people around me who were positive that gave me that motivation to move forward. When we come back, we continue a chat with Amanda as well as Miss Alisa Alvis. We'll be right back.
It's the Friends of Sign Hill 5th Annual Fundraising Barbecue, Saturday, July 14th from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Friends of Crown Heights, 1435 Prospect Place, between Utica and Rochester Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. On the menu, chicken, fish, and pork. Music by DI Entertainment. Donation $20. For more information, call 917-560-0432, 347-262-8014, or 646-248-3995.
Every day in your community, a child goes to school without breakfast. They're smart and they try hard, but it's not easy for them to learn when they're hungry. Right now, these children need help. You can help. Through the Start Bright Breakfast Initiative, you can help to brighten a child's future. 1. Recycle empty plastic beverage bottles by giving them to participating schools. 2. Drink Tusty water. Proceeds from every bottle purchased are used to sustain the school breakfast. And 3. Contribute $1 by texting 123 to 5446 from your Digicel phone. All supporters are eligible for ongoing prizes. No matter how you participate, you will help to brighten a child's future. Don't let our boys and girls start their school days on empty stomachs. Get involved today. Thanks for supporting Start Bright, a Tusty Water Breakfast Initiative. To support specific schools, visit tusty.com for more info.
He's back. No box, no kick, no fight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be at late with Sion Marshall? It's at late with Sion Marshall.
And welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking around with us on this edition of Up Late with Sion Marshall, coming live from the Harvest Bible Chapel in Arnorsville, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I like how it looks. I'm looking at myself on I'm on a few posts so I could look at myself on the live. Yeah, I do. I'm looking at myself on the live. I'm telling you. And I look awesome. Okay. I'm waiting for it to come on. I'll show you ladies how we look. We look really fine on this thing. So thank you so much again, Pastor Al, for allowing us to use the chapel. And for those persons who are on Facebook following, and all the comments are there, thank you so much for sticking around with us. And those of you here in the audience, thank you so much. Just two things before we start chatting. We start back our chat with, look, see? Well, that's really me, but you guys would see these would come. You know? That's me. See, look, there we are. Look at all that. Yeah, there we are. All right, great. All right, so tonight, just like we did last week, we have some live music in studio. And last week, I made a real faux pas. I think that's the word they use, French word. And I didn't introduce my live musician, who's really strumming. He's strumming the rhythm with his fingers, no bass. So I want to just show you Mr. Christian Mark. He's there with us. Strum something like
they killed me.
All right. Thank you so much, Christian. That's my one-man band. Give me a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. And to protect his identity, you know, when I was small, I was somebody's son, you know. Now I'm big, I'm somebody's dad. I never had my own identity, you know. I go to the preschool and it's, Sion daddy. You know, so I'm not going to say whose son he is because he has his own identity. Right, Christian? So we go to that, right? All right, good. All right, so that's Christian Mark. All right, so joining us on stage here is Miss Alisa Alvis. Alisa is a school and clinical psychologist. I'm going to use this introduction to brag. Alisa was recommended to me by another psychologist, Kimberly Cambridge, who is my student. Yeah, I taught Kimberly. That was a bragging moment. I would have loved to say I taught Alisa, but I didn't, unfortunately. But good night, Alisa, and thank you so much for doing this with us tonight.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so you've been listening to the conversation between Amanda and I, but before we get there, tell us a bit about Alisa, where Alisa started. By the way, somebody messaged me today and started telling me how, she was born in Bermuda. And I'm like, dude,
guilty.
Calm down, you know what I mean?
I guess I'm going to have to do my Vincent Bonafide on here.
You need to, right?
Country from long time.
My
mother from Parkhill, my father from Byra.
There you go.
Let's not. But it's true. Guilty. I was born in Bermuda. We moved back here when I was almost 9. A lot of the history very similar to Amanda's in terms of education. I did the last little bit of primary school at Windsor Primary School. First graduating class, 1993. Then GHS and community college. And then I was an Island Scholar. Very fortunate in that regard.
I'm sharing the stage with an Island Scholar. Thank you so much.
And went on to do my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD, all in psychology.
Yes. So we have someone who's extremely trained and qualified to talk about this issue.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Talk about it. All right. So you've listened to Amanda's story and mine to some extent, and how we have been coping. But the question I wanted to start with before we go on is depression a medical issue? Is it an issue of illness, or is it just some lazy person wanting to not get out of bed?
That's definitely not somebody just not wanting to get out of bed. One of the things that is so challenging about things like depression is because they're not visible. If you had a tumor and somebody could see it on a scan, or if you had a broken leg, or you had any physical ailment, nobody would accuse you of not being well. But there's a lot of invisible illnesses. I mean, depression is but one of them. There's other physical ailments that are not, they don't manifest themselves so readily, and people are like, well, you don't seem sick, but absolutely, depression is an actual illness. I mean, depending on who you are, you may define it differently. So a psychologist, we will talk about various aspects that contribute to depression, from the biological, psychological, and social, because there are things from all of those spheres that would contribute to somebody and how they're feeling mentally. If you're a psychiatrist, you may talk more about the specifically illness-related part from maybe a neurochemical or a neurobiological standpoint, because there are those aspects as well, and that's what we're looking to address when we prescribe a pharmacological treatment.
Okay.
Right? But no matter how you look at it, no matter if you look at it from the perspective of, as I said, those differing spheres that may contribute to it, or you're seeing it as something that is physically based, it is incredibly disabling for somebody who is clinically depressed. They're not pretending, they're sick.
Okay. Yeah. In your experience, well, let's look at the onset of it, and how it comes on. Is it a rapid onset? Is it a slow onset? Are there variations of it? How does a person arrive at the idea that I may be depressed?
They may not arrive at it at all. So they may be experiencing symptoms and not be able to put a name to it. And that's one of the things that is a particular danger, that depression very often goes undiagnosed, with a person never actually telling anyone how they're feeling. And for reasons that even Amanda was pointing out, maybe they feel as though if they were to tell someone what they've been experiencing, what sort of sensations they've been having, that people would think that they were making a mountain out of a molehill, that they don't have anything to feel sad about. If they're somebody who's very devout, they may think, oh, it's because I'm weak in my faith. So they may not actually ever get a label. So there's so many people. I mean, like if you're going to talk about how common this is, we kind of refer to it as the common cold of mental illness. Global prevalence is about 17% in lifetime prevalence. So so across an entire lifespan, almost 1 in 5 people will experience clinical depression. at any given moment, the estimates are about 350 million people are depressed at any given moment.
Wow.
So it's common,
So for
but not everybody has a label.
So for a population of St. Vincent of 110, there are about 20,000 depressed people in St. Vincent.
Right. So I mean,
over lifespan.
well, in terms of what we've seen from the Caribbean, and one of the things that is really important for people like Kimberly coming back to the region and working, and people like myself, is contributing to the research base, because there really is a paucity of data that comes specifically out of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But in terms of the prevalence rates that we see here, they really do reflect the global numbers, that we see numbers as ranging from anywhere between 12% to 25% in terms of lifetime prevalence. So it is very common, and it's more common among women. Women are twice as likely to be diagnosed as depressed than men. They are more likely to express suicidal ideation and parasuicidality, so self-harming behaviors, but men are more likely to complete suicide. So it affects both genders, just that I think there's societal things around a woman probably more readily verbally expressing how she's feeling and calling it sadness, whereas with men we may see more irritability, we may see more aggression. Yeah. So it looks different depending on the gender. It looks different depending on age as well. In children we see a lot more irritability than we do in adults as well, because children can't verbalize their feelings as readily as an older person.
What are some of the symptoms that an individual who may be going through this could look for? They're looking at it right now. They're looking at up late. Everybody's up late. And somebody might be thinking, am I depressed? Yeah. What are some of the things? Or am I going through depression?
Right.
Because I guess there's something, maybe, I don't know, a difference between being depressed and going through depression. I don't know.
So Amanda said something earlier, and I thought that this was a really good thing to note. Almost everybody has the experience of feeling depressed.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Because there are things that are reasonable to get depressed about.
Right, failing your exam, repeating class.
Yes, and you will have a momentary depression, but there's distinctions between that and an actual clinical diagnosis.
Right.
So I can talk about this from the standpoint of what would be required for somebody to say, oh, we've got some check boxes here. Are you clinically depressed? Meaning that, does this mood meet a standard where we say this has gone beyond a concern to being something that is diagnosable? So the two things that we would look at is persistent sadness for 2 weeks or more, unabated, right?
Okay. You've had that, Amanda?
I've had that, and to be quite honest, during that period of time, you don't even realize it happens. Like my husband, who's one of my biggest support systems, he would have to be like, it's been 2 weeks now, you've been depressed. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Just like yesterday.
And then the other thing that we would say you would have to present with is, so one of the two, either the persistent sadness or what we call anhedonia, which is a fancy word for not being able to take pleasure in things that previously brought you pleasure. So it's a sensation of being flat. It's like, I don't want to do anything.
You're feeling meh.
Meh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Like if you wanted to get fancy, you were using French before, the sense of ennui.
There you go.
There
you go.
So for example, somebody like Amanda saying, even things that bring me great joy, my vocation, my artistic passions, feeling like I don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
Those are the two big things that we look for. And then there's a bunch of accompanying symptoms that are relevant. So disturbances in sleep. A lot of people talk about extremes, either not being able to sleep, having insomnia, or hypersomnia, often accompanied by not feeling rested when they're done. Like, I slept and I slept and I slept, and then when I wake up, I still feel tired. Lethargy, a sense of heaviness, weight gain or weight loss. In more severe cases, people who start neglecting hygiene and grooming, right? That, I don't feel like getting up, ergo I'm not really showering, I'm not really shaving, I'm not really, combing my hair.
I shaved today, though. I did.
Thank God.
I did. It's been 2 weeks, but I shaved.
And in terms of the other things, persistent feelings of worthlessness, not feeling optimistic about the future or the world, having what in psychology we'll call a negative triad. Negative feelings about the self, negative feelings about the world, negative feelings about the future. So just not hopelessness. Yeah, like a lot of my clients, and even myself when I've been depressed, is the sensation of being weighted down.
Based on the statistics, 1 in 5, and from what we've discussed, it really doesn't pick and choose anybody. So
No.
anyone goes through this. Would you say that there's a stigma that is associated with the depression that prevents people from wanting to admit or at least seek help?
Of course, definitely. I think that from a number of different angles. We come from a society that places a lot of value on Christian faith, and some people feel as though to admit to having these sorts of problems it flies in the face of that, or is an indication that they are somehow weak in the spirit. And then there's also just pressure to appear functional, to look strong. Like the expression I use is performing normalcy. Maybe because you're anticipating the conversations you'll have to have about it. So you know that something's not right, but at the same time, to start talking about it would mean, when people get that pity look on their face, they look at, oh, are you okay?
I hate that.
And then every time they see you, it'll be, are you okay? And just not wanting to do that. So there's some of that as well. Yeah. And then I think also people being worried about, okay, if I were to say that I'm feeling this way, are people going to doubt my capacity to do other things? Are people going to doubt my ability? So for example, somebody like Amanda saying that she experiences depression and is a parent, I think that those things are really important, knowing that there's a lot of people who experience this and are functional and functioning. Yeah. They're not made of glass, right? But I think people do really worry about what the public perception of them will be after they endorse symptoms of depression.
I had, and that's an interesting point that you made, because I had a discussion with a young lady who, her major concern about coming forward and speaking about it was, how would that affect my job prospects? When people see me saying that I'm depressed, would they want to hire me still? Yeah. Would it impact negatively my chance of going to university? And these were the real questions that a young lady who's like 21 years old came to me with, and I really couldn't answer in a very, very genuine way. I figured it shouldn't, because it'd be discriminatory, but the reality is people do things based on their own assumptions and what they think.
I mean, with some people it can.
Yeah. All right. We're going to take a break, but before we do this, let me just. I was going through the promo for Searchlight this week. It's hilarious. Check this one. In Searchlight this weekend, lawyers brawl at a rum shop. Police investigating reports of assault. Well, they might have been drinking rum because they're depressed. I don't know. That happens. All right. Medical student stranded in St. Vincent uses music as a lifeline. Now, that jumped out at me. Because maybe that medical student may have been having feelings of what we're discussing here, and that was a lifeline. The use of marijuana and cases of psychosis do not increase when marijuana laws are changed, says CARICOM. 2 men freed of charge for murdering a 10-month-old baby. Okay. Wouldn't comment on that. Carnival gets in full swing this weekend. All this and much more in the Searchlight newspaper. Journalism you can trust. Pick up your copy at newsstands everywhere tomorrow, but they're also available online at searchlight.vc. When we come back, we continue chatting with Alisa, but we also introduce Pastor Al. We'll be right back.
It's the Friends of Sign Hill 5th Annual Fundraising Barbecue, Saturday, July 14th from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Friends of Crown Heights, 1435 Prospect Place, between Utica and Rochester Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. On the menu, chicken, fish, and pork. Music by DI Entertainment. Donation $20. For more information, call 917-560-0432, 347-262-8014, or 646-248-3995.
Every day in your community, a child goes to school without breakfast. They're smart and they try hard, but it's not easy for them to learn when they're hungry. Right now, these children need help. You can help. Through the Start Bright Breakfast Initiative, you can help to brighten a child's future. 1. Recycle empty plastic beverage bottles by giving them to participating schools. 2. Drink Tusty water. Proceeds from every bottle purchased are used to sustain the school breakfast. And 3. Contribute $1 by texting 123 to 5446 from your Digicel phone. All supporters are eligible for ongoing prizes. No matter how you participate, you will help to brighten a child's future. Don't let our boys and girls start their school days on empty stomachs. Get involved today. Thanks for supporting Start Bright, a Tusty Water Breakfast Initiative. To support specific schools, visit tusty.com for more info.
He's back. No box, no kick, no fight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be at late with Sion Marshall? It's at late with Sion Marshall.
And welcome back. Welcome back to this very special edition of Up Late with Sion Marshall, coming live from Harvest Bible Chapel in Annisville, St. Vincent. Now, I'm probably going to talk to Pastor about making Harvest a permanent home. I'm just kidding. But it's really a wonderful accommodation, and we're really happy to be here tonight. We're discussing the issue of depression. We've been talking with Vanloo Blucher, someone who has been experiencing or suffering from depression for a very long time. We've discussed also with Alisa Alvis. She is a clinical and school psychologist, and now we've incorporated host pastor for Harvest Bible Chapel, Pastor Al. Pastor Al, good evening.
Good evening.
And thank you so much for consenting to do this.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Happy to have
both
you.
Hosting us and being a part of a panel.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.
So we jump right into the issue of depression. And Alisa alluded to, or at least spoke specifically to the issue of faith-based responses to people feeling depressed. That it's just maybe a situation where their spirit is weak. Do you experience, as a pastor, someone who shepherds a flock, do you experience those type of responses very often?
Oh, absolutely.
And when you do, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we are very aware of. I think there is a stigma, particularly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's attached to it. Mm-hmm. So that very same stigma that's in the society comes into the church. And we often find that people are secretive. They are oftentimes afraid to come to even ask for help. And so there are times that you would have to draw it out of them. We heard of some of the symptoms mm-hmm. that we see. And sometimes when we see that and you start to probe and you have to probe, and then oftentimes you don't see them and you're wondering, well, what's going on? And you call, and that's when we begin to realize that there is some form of depression that's happening. And so we have to invite them in as an under shepherd and talk with them and try to get to the heart of the problem. And sometimes when it's too much for me to deal with, then of course I would have to refer them to someone else. But we have seen that it's something that's very prevalent even in people who are Christians. And so it's not something, it's not necessarily just a physiological thing. I think people who think, well, why would a Christian struggle with depression? Of course they can, right? And it's something that as pastors we constantly have to deal with and constantly have to help people through and constantly have to pray with. And Doc talked about them even trying to harm themselves. We've seen all of that and more in the church.
Now, one of the reasons I invited Pastor on the panel is because he's a faith-based individual, so that faith is incorporated in what he does. He prays with them. As someone who's on the clinical side, do you see the value of faith in, what's the word I want to use? Not programs aimed at assisting people to get beyond their illness?
Of course. I mean, particularly so whenever we are addressing any sort of treatment for any sort of mental illness, be it depression, anxiety, or anything else, one of the things that we're doing as a therapist is that you're forming an alliance with the client. And part of that alliance is working within their value and belief system. So if a client comes in and tells me, one of the things that is very important to me is my faith, the church is one of the pillars of my life, then absolutely. Their church, not just in terms of religious practice, whether that is study of scripture, whether it's prayer, whether it's worship, but also the church as a site for community. Because whenever we're looking to help somebody with a mental illness, one of the things that we're looking for is, where are their supports? You mentioned a couple of times that one of the things that was so helpful to you were people who were supportive, be it family members, be it friends.
Yes.
So church is a place for community. So I, at least myself as a clinician, no matter what my personal belief system is, I'd really be remiss in not including the person's faith in their treatment.
Okay. We talk about the prevalence of it, and it, as I said earlier, it doesn't skip anyone, not Christians, not professionals, and so forth. But one of the things that I experienced is having people there to reach out to. How important is that in assisting people suffering with depression, to have individuals there who not only are there to speak to them and encourage them, but also listen to them? How important is that?
Yeah, so very, very important. What I have seen and experienced as a pastor is just for people knowing that you are there for them. So it's the you can call at any time. So I make myself available. Okay, it doesn't matter what time of the day. It doesn't matter what time of the night. You can call. You can send me a message, right? And I will do my best to respond. So the availability of me as a pastor, I have found to be very important. I have also found that having a support structure around them, in our church, we have what's called small groups, right? And they are groups designed to disciple people and offer accountability. So there are sections where in that group where the men would go together and talk and the ladies would go together and talk and pray. And what we have found is that it's been therapeutic for some people, because they're able then to form a bond with other ladies and able to share things that are deep down inside their hearts. And they have often found that therapeutic. Now, for the guys, it's harder to get men to talk, right? So it takes a longer time. But I think that bond is still formed. And I have often seen guys cry and share their hearts and saying, this is what I'm struggling with. But that comes through accountability. It comes through community. It comes through people coming alongside, praying for, caring for, supporting, and being available.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about during one of the breaks is Amanda was talking about the response to her video, and I was talking about posts that I've made on Facebook. The response that you get from people who think that nobody else is experiencing what they're experiencing. And one of the most crippling things about depression is the sense of isolation that it produces. So anything that hacks away at that chips away at this idea that A, you are by yourself, and B, that you have to figure this out by yourself, I think is helpful.
Okay, any final words?
Well, I mean, what I've also seen, and I think, and of course, speaking on it from a biblical standpoint, I think there were people in the Bible who struggled with depression.
Okay.
You look at in 1 Kings after Elijah did his great feat on Mount Carmel, and there's Jezebel said, I'm going to come and kill you. He ran. And then he kind of gave up, and he's like, God, take me, I can't take this anymore. And he kind of went into a funk, a depressing funk, right? And God had to come and minister to him and feed him and care for him. I think of Saul himself after David had killed Goliath, and people were shouting, Saul killed his thousands, but David his 10,000s, right? And Saul was like, well, who am I now? I'm not really king, and who's this little boy? And it kind of sunk him into a depressing mode, right? And he had to get ministered to. I think of Jonah, right? After God told Jonah to go and minister to the people at Nineveh, right? And those people were wicked, and Jonah wanted to see them dead. And after God spared them, Jonah kind of went into this, oh no, what have I done? And so on. And yet people had to come alongside them and minister to them. And so I see all of that, right? Not only in the world today, but it's also prevalent in the Bible. And people had to come alongside, people had to care for, people had to put their hands on their shoulders, people had to minister to them.
All right. With that, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, final words.
He's back. No box, no kick, no fight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be at late with Sion Marshall? It's at late with Sion Marshall.
Thanks so much for sticking around with us for the last hour or so. Actually, 57 minutes of our time. Those of you who are on Facebook and there you go. Thank you. Thank you so much. Those of you who are on Facebook and this post around the world, thank you so much for being here. I know it's different time zones. So some people are early in the morning, some are late at night, and so forth. Some are behind us, but that's also fine. Thank you so much. I'm just going to have Pastor Blake and Alisa give some brief closing comments, and then I would then sign off on tonight. So, Pastor Blake.
Yeah, and I just want to say that just from a pastoral perspective, prayer works. Reaching out to people works. So please don't stay there and feel isolated. There is help. The church is always here. There are many of us now who are trained in this. I think in the past that was very different, right? But there are many of us now, we have done pastoral counseling. We have counselors on our staff who are trained to handle these type of things. So please reach out, and we are here to serve the community, to serve the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and to help in whatever way we can. We realize that we can't do it all, and there are times then that we would refer to people like that.
All right. Alisa?
I think I'd like to underscore what Pastor Blake was saying by saying that, apart from depression itself being a disease, the real disease is silence. And the more conversations that we can have, there's things that those who are suffering can do in terms of reaching out for conversations, and those who are looking to support people being part of those conversations, just being genuinely curious and non-judgmental when somebody comes to you and tells you, I'm really struggling. How can I be helpful to you? How can I find you someone else who could maybe be helpful to you? So I think really breaking through that wall of silence is what will be most helpful to everybody in the long run.
All right, let me say thank you to Alisa, to Pastor Blake, to Amanda, the rest of the team. I'm Christian for providing some really good live music for us, WHD Ultra, Vince and everybody. Look, there's no need to suffer in silence. I've had periods of it and others have. And we've pulled through. What is important is that we first of all recognize that there are people out there who care about us and are there willing and ready to help us. We just need to ask. They can't read our minds. If they could, I'm sure they'd reach in and do what they can for us. But don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to speak out. And those of us who are there as support systems, try not to judge. That's the last thing we want. Sometimes all we need is a listening ear. Be that, nothing more. Until next week, with another edition of Uplift with Sir Marshall. Have a good night. Thank you for watching.